It's my belief that machines are generally better than free weights for growing muscle and getting stronger. And I know that's a controversial opinion, and I'll admit that there are exceptions to that rule, but I'm going to make a case in this video with 3 different reasons, primarily as to why you should rethink this idea that free weights are superior to machines. Before I get into reason number 1, I just want to make it very, very clear that this is not a free weight bashing video. I think that for the most part, when people are intermediate advanced, you can use machines and free weights and make both work awesomely. I use both in my training. When I train people, I use both in their training. So please do not interpret this as a free weight bashing video. Free weights are awesome and can be as awesome as machines in many, many instances. So with that caveat out of the way, what I want to hone in on is a more specific context, which is the context of beginners and more generally people who are not super skilled in the gym. So people can be training for multiple years and consider themselves intermediates and still be beginners based on their muscle, their strength, and just what their lifts actually look like. So reason number 1 why I think machines are generally more appropriate for this beginner type, call it a beginner, call it an unskilled type, is that people in this category generally have no skill. So think about this in an analogy. If you were teaching someone how to ride a bike, would you plop them on the bike and say, "Hey, Jimmy, best of luck to you. Here we go down the block, go down the street, and just, take it for a test drive." No, what you would do is you would first get those little training wheels, you would stick them on the bike, you would put Jimmy on the bike, and then Jimmy would go around and short distances and actually learn, okay, this is what a bike kind of feels like. And the interesting thing is that when it comes to lifting and training, those training wheels actually never need to come off, right? Like you could just permanently be riding the bike with training wheels on it. And if you're getting bigger, you're getting stronger, you're looking better, you're getting more fit, what's the problem, right? The very use of free weights, the idea that using free weights in and of itself is the end goal is a silly, silly, outdated concept. You could also maybe take like a bowling analogy, right? If you've ever been to a bowling alley, a lot of the times when you're learning to bowl, or if you're just super bad at bowling, they put up these bumpers on the side so that the ball doesn't just consistently roll through the side and, back behind the actual pins, right? It makes it easier for people to actually just enjoy the process of bowling without having to worry about all these potential downsides. So this leads us to reason number 2, which is that because of reason number 1, because people are generally less skilled, less coordinated, especially when people are learning exercises for the first time, they kind of appear like a fish out of water, or like some kind of newborn giraffe who's just trying to learn to walk. It's like if you, the listener here, has ever trained someone who has never lifted before, basically what happens is they'll pick up a pair of dumbbells and it's like they're flopping and flailing all over the place, and they have no ability, at least in the initial phases of actually learning to do the movement, to actually add load and learn what effort actually feels like in the short term. Whereas you put someone, say, on a machine chest press for the first time, right? All they have to do is push into the handles. Of course, you have to set them up in a way that's comfortable for them. But you sit them down, they push into the handles, right? The machine itself is guiding the motion. It is providing a constraint to the motion, which allows the person to use a technique that is appropriate for the desired goal. So because of the fact that the machine is really easy to use and that it guides the person, much like the training wheels guide the person's bike ride, they can actually learn to understand, okay, this is the feeling of training hard. And if you make the argument, well, oh, if they're a beginner, they don't really need to train hard. Yeah, it's like, okay, well, at some point, right, they're going to need to learn to actually put effort into their training. And I also don't really subscribe to the notion that like beginners should just kind of coast through their workouts because they can make progress doing anything. I don't think that's a long-term solution to approaching their training in an intelligent way. And so when they're doing that chest press in that highly stable environment and they can actually learn like, oh, this is what it feels like for my chest to actually be fatigued. This is what it feels like for reps to start to slow down toward the end of my set. This is what it feels like to use higher amounts of load in an environment environment where there's basically zero risk of injury. I mean, there's never actually zero risk of injury, right? But if you give someone a barbell or dumbbells for the first time and you actually give them an amount of load that they could do for say 5 to 10 reps, I've had many people who I give them weights and they're scared. I'm like, this is like the lightest possible weight that we could use. There are many instances in which people feel tremendously unsafe, and that's just going to kind of muddy the water in them actually learning the skill of, say, in this case, how to press. Whereas again, if you do it on a chest press machine, all that happens if they get scared, they flail out, they make a mistake, their elbow goes wobbly in the wrong direction, right? They either just push into the handle differently, or the machine just, the pin, the weight stack hits itself, and the motion just stops, right? Nothing happens. There's nothing that's capable of falling on them, injuring them in any way. So again, machines, they provide the training wheels for people to actually learn how to develop skills, and in doing so, people learn more easily how to actually create effort in an environment where they're not worried and where they are literally more safe learning those motions. And then reason number 3, when you use machines first, and I've seen this time and time again with people, when you use machines first and you allow people to actually learn how to generate some kind of effort into their training, transitioning from machine-based movements to dumbbell, barbell, kettlebell-based movements, all that stuff becomes much easier to learn in the free weight domain. And this is because when people, again, learn to create effort, to create controlled and effortful reps in those more stable scenarios, once you take them out of that more stable scenario into, say, a dumbbell press from a machine chest press, right, their brain already has a motor program for what should a hard press feel like, right? And so I've run this experiment multiple times with different people, and invariably what I see is that the process for teaching something like a dumbbell press in this context becomes 1,000 times easier. Like, you literally need not say anything other, and this is what I literally will have said, is, hey, remember that machine chest press that we were doing for like 2 months over there? And be like, yeah, okay, I remember that thing. Yeah, just basically mimic what we were doing there, like in terms of what you were thinking about, i.e. just pushing, and do it with dumbbells, right? And it's like, I have even with my bias, I have been surprised at how well that has worked. Now, again, if you're working with someone who has a long training history, well then, okay, the dumbbell press and the machine press, if they're doing it, for the 1,000th time on either thing, it's like, okay, both of those options are fantastic. So keep in mind that I'm talking about a segment of people in this particular context of this video who are sort of lacking those things and who need to learn those things. And again, in my personal experience actually training other people, and even just in concept, right, providing those training wheels is a really, really fantastic idea. And again, in those stable environments, people learn to create controlled and effortful reps. And I think that is something that is hugely important for anyone who's going to be in this sort of lifting weights game for the longer term. And you might think, by the way, the listener, that you are totally out of this category. You're like, I'm not a beginner, I'm super skilled, I create high amounts of effort. A lot of people I find personally will say something like that, and then I watch them do exercise, and even if it looks really good, a lot of times a rate limiter for people in continuing progress is actually learning how to put effort into their sets. So a different sort of framing on this might be, if you are someone who thinks that they can train to failure appropriately, machines are the best way to actually put that to the test, right? It's like, if you sit down on a leg extension, it's very black and white. If at the end of the set you had the same rep speed as the first rep, whether or not you've actually trained to failure, right? If you've trained to failure on a leg extension, true failure where you can no longer do any reps, you try to kick the pad, it doesn't move, bingo bongo, it's, that's the end of the set. So again, I don't want any of you to read this whole video as Ben saying you should never use free weights. Free weights are bad. Free weights are, inherently injurious. This is more just specific to the context of an application where, again, I think many people fall into this category where they think they are skilled in ways that they aren't necessarily. And they aren't skilled in those ways because they've only ever used free weights, and they've never actually done what is truly a hard set in their life because of the fact that they have been anti-machine. So if you are still watching at this point in the video and you are someone who has historically never used machines for XYZ mysterious reason that XYZ functional guru has told you about, give machines a try. Try to spend a long period of time actually learning how to use machines. A lot of people think they know how to use machines. They get on them and they basically just say, oh, this machine sucks, and it's just because they don't know how to use them. It kind of reminds me of, you know, someone in their 80s or 90s who gets a new technological device like an iPhone, who says like, what is this garbage? I don't know how to use this garbage. And it's like, okay, meanwhile, all these other people are loving using their iPhone and can use it really easily if just a little bit of effort is applied into learning how to use it. So a little bit more of a conceptual one today, but I hope you enjoyed this video. Please drop your comments below. Please try not to be too hateful, but if you want to be hateful, maybe just direct that hate into a kind of well thought through comment about your disagreement. So see you all in the next video.